Hi, I'm Raj Kumar, President and Editor-in-Chief of Devex, back here in Dubai at the Global Education and Skills Forum, the kind of Davos of global education. Lots of discussions, lots of things happening today, a lot of buzz behind us. And here with a great guest, Philippa, who is the Head of Programs and Advocacy at the Malala Fund. Thank you for coming and talking with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so one of the discussions happening here is about the gap in financing.
Yeah.
I believe the World Bank is saying it's a $39 billion gap. We recently had the replenishment of the Global Partnership for Education. It was a bit underwhelming. Mm-hmm. Give us a sense of what you see as the picture around financing for education. I know you focus particularly on girls' education at the Malala Fund, but give us a sense of that picture and how you see it.
Yes, as you said, there's estimated to be a $39 billion annual financing gap to fund education. We're concerned about how we're going to fill that gap. So we had the SDGs came into force in 2015, and that sets out a much broader ambition for education than we had previously under the Millennium Development Goals. We did a bit of research as Malala Fund before the UN General Assembly in September to look at actually having made that commitment to a bigger ambition for education, which included not just primary school and lower secondary, but also upper secondary. Had governments really stepped up in terms of policy and funding commitments in line with the ambition. And we found that actually we couldn't say that any government, whether it was a donor government or a developing country government, had seriously stepped up its financing in line with that increased ambition. In fact, a number of governments had plateaued with their spending and others had cut back on spending. So you have countries like Australia who are cutting back their aid budgets. You have countries like Nigeria who are cutting back their domestic budget on education. You have countries like Brazil who are instituting a freeze on public spending despite having signed up to this global ambition to get more kids in school. So we're concerned that we're not going to meet that gap. There are glimmers of hope. So you say the GP replenishment was underwhelming. It wasn't where we wanted it to be, but I was encouraged on the day that it was further than we thought it would be.
Okay.
So we saw some new donors coming through who haven't traditionally given in this space. So
we're in the UAE.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the UAE came in with double what the GP were hoping that they would come in on. On a much smaller scale, we had Ireland who also came in with an ask which was bigger than we'd hoped. We have serious concerns at the fund around the G7 nations. So there were some who made strong contributions, but not as strong as they needed to be. So the UK and the Canadian contribution, though fairly high, were not up to what we had asked and what the GPE had asked of them, or in line with what they could give based on their GDP. But other G7 nations came in very low. So we had Japan coming in pledging less than the first African donor to the GP, which was Senegal. We had Germany come in with a partial pledge, so we're hopeful that we can still get some more funding from them there. And actually I should give a shout out to France, who traditionally haven't been a strong donor in this sector, particularly at basic education and secondary education levels, who actually did show leadership through the whole GP process in being one of the hosts of the conference, but also then putting their money where their mouth was and putting money alongside that with a fairly strong pledge. So it's a mixed picture, but we're not seeing the sort of catalytic jump start that we need.
Required, right? Now you've got fund in your name.
We do.
So is part of the mission of the Malala Fund to raise funds yourselves that you will then push out? Talk more about what your strategy is in this environment of limited funding.
So we work in three areas. One is around investment. So as you say, we have the word fund in our name. And what we try to do is fund local education activists who are working on these issues locally and nationally. So we recognise that much as Malala and her father Ziauddin were doing in Pakistan, there are many people locally who understand the issues that are keeping girls out of school and are doing what they can to address those issues. So that could be through advocacy, it could be through developing solutions that really meet the need as it is felt by the girl in the individual place. And Malala and Ziauddin have said to us that if they had had a little bit of support as activists in their space in Pakistan, they could have done so much more. And that's not just funding support to allow them to do better campaigning, to get their organisations into better shape, to see systemic change. But it's also support through linking them in with others who can provide the skills that maybe they don't have, but they need to take their work to another level.
So kind of building a global network of these advocates around the world.
So that's how the Malala Fund invests its money, finding those advocates and then supporting them, networking them together, not just with each other, but with some of our partners more broadly, who can bring their insights and their skills from the work that they do. The second thing that we do is amplify. So Malala will often say that her story isn't unique. Actually, it's the story of millions of girls throughout the world who are struggling to get an education. And she wants to bring those voices to the tables and the platforms where decision makers are sat, or where they're listening to the issues and hopefully responding to the issues. And so we work to identify young women and support young women to be able to bring their voices to those spaces. So we work with young women in Nigeria, young women in Kurdistan, young women in Mexico, Pakistan, India, others who may not have the opportunity to bring their voice to the global stage or the national stage. And Malala often will speak with them, or she will say, no, I cannot go and speak at an engagement, but I would love you to hear from my sister, whoever it may be, who can bring her unique perspective about the challenges that she's facing.
Right, bringing your platform to these advocates around the world. Okay.
And then the third thing that we do is advocacy. So obviously we support the advocacy of the local activists that we fund, and we support them to advocate towards their government, whether that is at national level or state or provincial level, not just for policy change, but also for those governments to take on some of the solutions the activists have found are working and to scale those up. We support girls, as I've said, to advocate. We advocate ourselves as a fund, so we have a team who engage with government. But at the moment we're engaging with the Argentinian government on the G20 process, with the Canadian government on the G7 process. And then we have Malala and Ziadine, who are still very much activists at heart.
Sure.
And still want to be contributing to this debate and influencing this debate in favour of girls' education. So those are the three things the fund does.
So thinking about that debate, we're at this global conference where really almost every part of the global education community is here. I know you focus in particular on the most marginalized girls in the world, in places where there are real challenges. How do you feel that part of the debate is advancing? Is it being left behind? There's a lot of talk of ed tech and artificial intelligence. Do you see those things connected, or what's your perspective?
I think they can connect. I think the danger is that if we don't intentionally make those connections, they won't happen. Mm-hmm. So we know that globally, if we look at out-of-school rates between boys and girls, they are starting to converge. So across secondary levels of education and increasingly across primary, girls have pretty much an equal chance of being in school and boys, but that's global. Then if you look a layer down at regional statistics, at national statistics, you can see there are many places where girls are left behind, and that's in the poorest countries, and it applies to the poorest girls and girls living in rural locations. And unless actually we make targeted effort to reach those populations, they're going to continue to be left behind as we head towards 2030. So I think the challenge coming to an event like this is to think about how can we take the debates, how can we take the great ideas that are working in some more developed economies, how can we take those to really reach those girls who are living in northern Nigeria, those girls who are living in Swat Valley in Pakistan, those girls who are living in Bihar State in India. And I think those connections can be made, but as I say, we need to sit down and make them.
Yeah. Well, I think there is hope, and I wonder if you've taken anything away from the conference that you're leaving with kind of an idea or something that's kind of giving you a sense that we're going to go back and do this at the Malala Fund. Anything takeaways so far from this discussion?
One of the things that struck me today is that a lot of the conversations that I've been in over these 2 days has been about what kind of skills do young people need to thrive in the year 2030. And the consensus seems to be that alongside foundational knowledge, they need to develop soft skills.
Absolutely.
And I would say that actually, arguably, those are the kind of skills that girls are born with. We know that girls and women more intuitively, innately have these softer skills. And actually, there's a great potential there among girls. And if teachers start now to engage and governments start to look at how they can bring these skills out of children in the classroom, I think the girls are going to respond really well. So I think there's great hope there if we do start to see teaching and learning moving in the direction of really incubating these soft skills. So that's exciting. I'm excited about some of the ed tech possibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many here, it's incredible. I mean, things you didn't even think you needed.
Right.
The possibilities are endless.
Right.
And I've had some great conversations with people who know far more than I do about how you can take those and translate those into the kind of communities where we work. So I'm excited to follow up on those. And I think the third thing that excites me is the engagement of business with this agenda. We know from evidence that there's a very strong connection between girls' secondary education in particular and sustainable and inclusive growth. And we need business to start making those connections, because women don't just become economically empowered from the age of 18 if they haven't had an education. And that's been, I think, one of the key pieces of the jigsaw that's been missing in business approach to date when it's looked at how it can stimulate growth. And so I'm excited that there are so many business people here, and I hope that they go away with the message that yes, we need to invest much further back. We need to invest to get girls into school, girls and boys into school, and learning the kind of skills that they can then go ahead and grasp their own futures and support not just their own futures, but the future of the economy more broadly.
Well, you're doing some important work with the Malala Fund. We follow you and cover you at Devex and look forward to continuing doing that. Thank you for taking some time to be here today.
Thank you.